think we live in a world where the language that we speak is different from the truths that exist in the world. What Another Way Now wants to be is a translator between realities that don't exist in our everyday life for people like me and you and others that we work with to understand other truths, other things that are happening in the world.
We provide this great bridge between fantastic storytellers and campaigners and really eager listeners who have time and they have resources to come and spend time in here. And I think that's what we're providing really, is this bridge to bring stories to places that need to hear it. And actually it provides a lot of value because once people hear about it here, we have a lot of power to do things, whether it be lobbying our MPs or connecting with charities that are already working, and we can support them in lots of different ways.
When people come together and join in a common purpose, there really isn't anything that can't be achieved. The energy that that creates and the sort of motivation and the excitement even, and what they take away from that room to go back out into the world to help make change. That is really how we see Another Way Now, is creating a space where that can happen.
In a lot of cases, sometimes people are seeing the world through a particular ideological lens, and that can be quite unhelpful. I think the real value of Another Way Now is it creates the space to have conversations between people who have something really valuable to contribute to each other and perhaps to a wider cause, but perhaps wouldn't get the opportunity to contribute it together and to have that conversation together.
I think Another Way Now play a beautiful role of friend, of companion, of mentor, of guide, of showing the way. I love that they live their values. They epitomise leaning in, and I know we're going to be walking this path together for a long time to come.
All the time that we're doing the stuff that we're doing, there's something else happening in the world. Like it's happening in Syria, like it's happening in the Lebanon, like it's happening in the Yemen. It's like it's happening in Hong Kong. You know, and we live here and we're comfortable and we don't know. And that's what I think Another Way Now is about. It's going, be happy, because that's the right way to be. But also it's about know what else is going on other than this. And that's really what I want to do, is marry another world with our world. And I don't want to create guilt, I don't want to create shame, I just want to create awareness.
Hello, everyone. Well, welcome to this online Another Way event. I'm Tina Katari. I'm the co-founder of Another Way, a charity really that's committed to highlighting human rights issues through the use of film and conversations. And today's another event in the same style. We're collaborating today with an organization called Together Films and an old friend of ours called the Orchid Project to bring you a wonderful film called A Girl From Mogadishu. We actually have the girl from Mogadishu here too, and she's in Mogadishu while she speaks to us. We've assembled a strong and fascinating panel who you'll meet shortly. Our moderator is Julia Lalla-Maharajh. She's the founder of the Orchid Project, and she's a long-term supporter and friend and collaborator of Another Way Now. So I'm really delighted that she's doing this with us in partnership. On our panel, we have Ifrah Ahmed, the girl from Mogadishu, who, as I said, is Mogadishu right now. We have Mary McGuckian, the director of the film, and she's in Dublin. We have Masooma Ranalvi of We Speak Out, which is an Indian women's rights organization, and she's sitting in Goa. And I forgot to say that Julia is sitting in Tooting, London. So we're all over the place, some more glamorous than others. So we brought this whole event together today really because it's to mark International Day of Zero Tolerance for FGM / FGC, female genital mutilation / female genital cutting. And although the actual day isn't until February the 6th, this is the nearest we could get to it. it's such an important issue that I think it's really great that we've been able to make all of this happen, even though it's online. And I also want to, at this point, thank you for helping us bring some awareness to these issues and to take these messages away if they mean anything for you, either from the film or from the panel. In a moment, you're going to see a short trailer of the film. And for those of you who've seen the film, it will remind you about what the film was about. Some of you may have seen it more than a week ago. And for those of you who haven't seen the film, it'll give you a taste and some sense of what the film is about and how it works. So after the trailer, we'll move straight on to Julia and the panel. And before I leave, I just want to say that during the whole event, there are going to be 2 boxes on your screen. One box is the chat box where you can communicate across the public space, really, in front of everybody. And the other box is the box that's the Q&A box. And that's the only box that the panel will see. And that's your opportunity to ask them questions, make comments. They won't see the chat box, but they will see the Q&A box. So please just remember to use which box when. Join us in the discussion. Thank you for being here and enjoy the evening.
Beautiful, isn't it?
That's the last thing I remember seeing. Nalla.
haddii fursad aad u haysatid inaad tagtid waa inaad ka faa'iidaysataa.
افرح نقرا على الدوايع ايش ايوه هاي انت وترتدها وحالنا قحوطية ايرلند وادل في عن.
What's your name, dear? Where are you from?
My name is Ifrah Ahmed.
هل كان نبتقليها كويسة تعال.
If we're going to just do a little examination down below, nothing to worry about.
Would you ask her how did it happen?
Sit there. Tanwa naga. Kaswa talking kena.
I think we all know a lot about, but a thing we don't talk about cutting.
Meeshan waaye meesha katmit. Waana dhaqankeena.
Waa khalad.
Ifrah, soo noq.
I will not stop talking. I will not stop talking until we are free of FGM.
Your best days are still ahead. And Ireland, if anyone ever says otherwise, just respond, yes we can.
waxaan kugu dhahay gabdhaha fiican ma hadal badan.
I will not be silenced.
Until girls like me are free of the fear, the pain, the shame, I will not stop.
Whether black or white, we are all women. Women who are entitled to the same human rights, no matter where we come from.
Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. I don't know about you, but I got goosebumps all over again, just from the trailer. So to actually be in this virtual Zoom room with all of you and this extraordinary panel is just such a blessing. I'm looking on my screen for Ifrah. I can't see her. We did have her. I don't know if we've managed to drop the Mogadishu link.
She's on a link. She says she can see the video, but she's no camera again. She logged out by mistake instead of just turning off her camera. Sorry, housekeeping. So she's actually on the chat at the minute. Great.
Well, our tech team behind the scenes will bring us shortly, Ifrah. In the meantime, as Tina said, here are our wonderful panel. the extraordinary filmmaker Mary McGuckian, who has produced this incredible film, which I'm so delighted I've now seen quite a few times. Masooma Ranalvi, who's another extraordinary activist. And
I thought I lost you all. I was worried. Here I am.
And here is the real life Ifrah Ahmed, who, as we know, those of us who've seen the film, even if you've only seen the trailer, the words to express what this woman has done to move the dial on this issue that's so close to all of our hearts. We don't have the words, but we're going to make them up in the next 40 minutes together. So welcome, everybody. Tina's done housekeeping. I'm going to first of all have a chat with the panel, and then we're going to open up. I see you're already using the chat box. Go for it. We can only see each other and ourselves. You're there, you're doing the washing up, you're feeding the kids, you may be waking up the other side of the planet. This chat box and the Q&A box are the ways that we can connect, and we are all about weaving connection and women coming together, and men, and making the world stronger and better. So please go mad in those boxes. In the meantime, I'm going to shine a little light on these extraordinary women. So it won't surprise you, Ifrah, I'm coming to you first. Hey, look, I knew you before this film and before this story, and that was my honor and privilege to kind of know, if I may, your unquenchable light, your determination, and frankly, your wicked sense of humor, as well as your ability to get a selfie from everybody, which I adopted myself. Ifrah, obviously, this is an extraordinary story for us all to witness, and a privilege for us to walk with you. There's a saying, you know, you have to walk a mile in someone else's shoes, and before you even get to know a little bit. And I think we've walked a little way with you. And again, kudos to Mary for making such a great film to take us on this journey. And really heartfelt gratitude for showing so much of yourself through this film. I want to ask, first of all, we left you in about 2015, I think, in the film. So there've been 5 years, 6 years. Tell us what you're up to right now. Tell us about where your life is and what you're focused on in this moment. You're on mute.
Thank you, Juliet. Remember, first time we met, I asked you to help me to host a high-level event in Mogadishu. And you remember there was an attack, and we all kind of stressed with everything, and it was almost decide not to do it, and we do it. And I was strongly believe I'm gonna do it. I want to do it. I have to fight back and not stop. So what I have been up to last 6 years, I have been continuing the campaign through Ifrah Foundation with global media campaign support, and also UN agencies like UNFPA. And I have been in Somalia since 2019, because I came back end of 2019. 2019. So, you know, there was a story of little girl who died for bleeding. We break the story, Dhaka story. And Dhaka story was a local story and became international story. And I was so happy. And then we had a petition signed by the Somali federal, the former prime minister, petition which was signed over 1 million people around the world, demanding Somalia to legislate on FGM. I was very close to pass FGM bill in Somalia, like Ireland, but it didn't happen because the government was didn't last long. I was continuing doing all the work I could to protect the young girls. During Dhaka story, I break the world. I have managed to save within few months 20 girls who family listened the radio, the story of Dhaka, and they decide if their daughter was bleeding, they decide to run to hospital so they will have a prevention and protect and save the girls if anything happened. I remember being in Morocco on holiday, part of my surprise 30th birthday. And I've been phone call every night, midnight, every morning, talking to the family here and there and trying to facilitate finding hospitals. So that made me so proud to do it. And I was continuing lobbying with the Somali federal government. And also, of course, we have done such amazing work through Ifrah Foundation, going to New York, to Nairobi, to Mogadishu, and everywhere, just lobbying for our foundation to establish well. And we had a lot of high-level meetings. We raised a lot of high-level meetings on FGM in Somalia and globally. And also now we have a very good plan that I had an idea 7 years ago, but now it became an action, and it's called the Dear Daughter. And I had this idea for like last 6 years that I've been working tireless in Somalia and Europe and other African countries. And now the Dear Daughter, it became an action. And the idea is that last 6 years working in Africa, I find out how many mothers are seeing that I was scared, I wanted to cut my daughter, and I feel this is not right. And I said, maybe something that the mother's coming from, and I feel that mothers should make a pledge to say, dear daughter, I was cut and I will never cut you, something that protects the young girl. So now, dear daughter, it became an action, not just again, something dream, but now is a reality. We meant to launch the daughter 6th of February, but it didn't happen. But we will launch soon. And I had a meeting with UN Women this morning, and I was talking about it. And the guys, he was telling everyone that this is Ifrah. Ifrah never gives up. Ifrah never stopped talking. Ifrah never let go anyone that she feels is important. And he was talking about the selfie as well. She takes selfie and she posted on social media. So I'm just to keep going with my work and trying, to prevent, now also other risks we have in Somalia and Africa and globally as well is COVID. COVID has affected in Somalia, especially women in IDBs, because during the first lockdown, the COVID break, many women who've been having a babies, they were scared to go to hospital because of the if they go to hospital, maybe they were treated like they have a COVID. So pregnant women to decide to stay home in the IDBs, and we lost March to October, we lost about 7 women for bleeding. So we went on IDBs and we interviewed a female gatekeepers. Also, the school Holy Quran was closed, and there were many young girls who were cut, and some of them, they died in IDBs because there was no health facility, and they felt if they go to hospital again, nobody will actually give them the opportunity to be treated as FGM or bleeding. So that was also the challenge, but we were so lucky to happy to work with Global Media Campaign, who then had an emergency media campaign in most of African countries, and Somalia was one of them. And I was leading with one of my colleagues who was media trained by Global Media Campaign. So we have learned so much. Ifrah Foundation trained 80 women in IDBs in terms of understanding the risks of female genital mutilation. Global Media Campaign supported to contribute 80 radios to these 80 women we trained. Now we make sure that these women, they listen to the radio when we produce something on radios, and they listen. We call them and we say that today there will be a program talking about FGM, and they turn on the radio and they listen. And what they listen is that religious leader is speaking about FGM is not the religion and the reality of it. The lesson doctor is saying the risks and the consequence, and myself encouraging them that if there is any danger or risks that the woman who is pregnant thinks that she might cut off or bleed, she should be seeking help. And then we made it deal with the gatekeeper in terms of knowing all those women. So that's what we up to since then.
Ifrah, I don't want to stop you, but I kind of, I want to just sit and talk to you because there's such wisdom here, and thank you. And it's no surprise to anyone on this webinar that what we captured in the film, what Mary captured, that spirit, has just come through in everything you're saying, every way you're working, and of course, so up to date with what we're all facing with COVID and how extraordinarily, you know, we talk about the shadow pandemic of violence against women that COVID is resulting in, and what you've just talked about in the IDP camps, so important there. I need to do justice to our other wonderful panelists though. So I'm just going to skip to Mary. Mary, what can I say? I mean, as I say, heartfelt thanks to you for creating such a beautiful film. I'm going to ask, if I may, given Ifrah and her extraordinary story and everything that happens in her life, what was your sponsoring thought? What was your guiding light throughout the film that kept to your true north, shall we say?
I suppose, and thank you for that, for recognizing, for asking Ifrah the question you've asked in a way that you've asked it. You didn't ask her, how was it when you were 8 years old, and ask her to be a poster child. You asked her, what have you been doing since? And, you know, in a way that was part of the guiding north. What is this film about? It's not I didn't want it to be about the horrors of FGM. It had to be about some underlying thesis that could have impact. So anyway, we decided, because it's Ifrah's testimony, that, and you know, I didn't want to appropriate her story, that we would tell the story through her testimony, and that that's what the film will become about, the power of testimony. What happens when somebody channels their experiences as a force for good? They can be a channel for change. So that, I suppose, as long as we felt we were keeping to that story, then it felt like something worth doing.
And did you plot the narrative in terms of?
Well, they use all kinds of complicated conventions. It's only a 90-minute film. It can't possibly. I mean, you know, some people would call it a biopic. I would stray away from that because, you know, Ifrah was only 21 or 22 when the story stops, so it's hardly a life. It's the beginning of her life, and it had to, so, you know, you have a responsibility to the auteur and to the story and to her experience, a responsibility to other survivors, a responsibility to women generally, and how women are portrayed and sexual violence is portrayed, or gender-based violence generally, sexual violence and conflict, and all of the other issues. Inevitably, I mean, one of the funnier ways maybe of explaining it is Ifrah has a lot of friends. I mean, a great number of friends all around the globe. And of course, you can't write 35,000 friends into a 90-minute movie. So we made up 2 friends. And so what I love is that every friend Ifrah would meet at different screens, say, you know, it's you. Gets to be that friend, which is kind of emblematic of the whole film. And Ifrah does say a lovely thing about it, which is that the gift of her story, which is an incredibly generous gift, it's every survivor's story, and that's what we were trying to achieve, I think, fundamentally. Ifrah, do you think?
I love that, Mary, as well. It's that every woman, in a way, that okay, these are the issues that survivors.
Yeah, for filmmakers generally, and for all of us in human rights generally, is, you know, we're very conscious of the impact of contemporary culture on young women, particularly young women of color's sense of self, the culture that they can look to in terms of contemporary culture. What do they feel reflects them, or role models that they feel they can identify with? And those have been, as reports and statistics constantly tell us, very poorly, very much lacking in contemporary film and drama culture, particularly. To an extent, the music industry is changing, to an extent literature is changing, but in film and television it's been absolutely appalling, and it's been a retrograde step really in terms of some of the gains that have been made in terms of women's rights generally. But so to get to tell a story to me that was important, one of the aspects of important is that it was a single character narrative. This was a young female character who was self-empowered, and her achievements were not in relation to another male character. And
Thank you.
it's rare to get to tell that kind of story, or for those stories to emerge in such a way that you'll get them funded or distributed. So that was another of the great gifts of Ifrah's story.
Well, and speaking of powerful women role models who have also spoken out, Masooma, it's such a great pleasure to welcome you to this conversation as well. And you also have a story that moved from the private space to the public space, and also have the power of storytelling as the wind under your wings, shall we say. Can you say a little bit more about the power of story and your story?
So thank you so much, Julia. I want to thank AnotherWay Now for having me part of this panel. And I think the best part of this whole evening is I get a chance to see Ifrah, even though it's virtual, and to meet her and to just get a glimpse of the story. So it's really amazing, and my heartfelt greetings and a warm hug to you from India. So it's the power of storytelling, and I would use the word magic. There is magic in storytelling, and it's incredible how and as Mary was speaking, there's so much that I can relate to what Mary is saying. That the movement that we have built in India on the same issue is completely revolves around stories and the power of storytelling. It's through which we have been able to connect with people. There are so many things about a story. It's inspirational, it's relatable, there is a certain sense of universality which is there in story. So it may be my individual story, but yet it is a story of other women also. And that's where the connection comes. And most importantly, as Mary said, it's not so much about the history, but it's about the future. And it's where you're going to take that story to. And it's incredible because the movement which I started and which has kind of breathed life since I spoke about my story 5 years ago has inspired so many women, so many young women to take pledges and to actually take decisions which were unheard of, which one could have never imagined women would take in taking steps to kind of end this practice. And that's where it all starts with you as an individual, and then moves into the broader space and the broader realm of the collective and of the community and the society at large. So it's incredible. And I would say that this is a great tool that we have and that we are using constantly in our work to, kind of build campaigns around it.
Masooma, I think some people are still very surprised about the practice outside of the African continent. Could you just give us a tiny 101 about your campaign and the issues and the female genital cutting outside of Africa?
Yeah, sure. So the world at large, and rightly so, I mean, it's absolutely true, consider FGM to be an issue of Africa and the African continent. And yes, it is prevalent in a large part of the continent of Africa, and widely so. But the fact of the matter is FGM exists outside of Africa also. And one of the continents where it's really been neglected is Asia. There's a large prevalence of FGM in Asia. If you take countries like Indonesia, where again the numbers are huge, countries like Malaysia, India, Sri Lanka, Pakistan, you have Iran, you have Iraq, FGM exists. The form, the type of it is different. The nature of the practice is also very, very different. But the fact is that it exists. But the most important thing about the practice, and especially about India, since I am from India and leading a movement in India, is it's a completely secret practice. It's an invisible practice. Nobody really knows about it. And by nobody, I'm not even talking about society at large. I'm talking about within families, apart from the mother and the daughter. The mother takes the daughter to be cut. Apart from the two of them, no one outside of that bond knows. So many a times the father doesn't know, the brother doesn't know, and the sister also doesn't know that this has happened. It's that level of secrecy and shrouded in silence. My own instance is we're three sisters, and I'm the youngest of three sisters. And all of us were subject to it when we turned 7. We were taken and we were cut. We never spoke about it till literally all of us were in our 30s. And it is then when we were talking, imagine the kind of fear and shame and humiliation attached to it, that we never had the courage to speak about it to your own sisters. And when we spoke about it at the age of 30, all of us literally, we realized that, hey, why didn't we, go to each other for some kind of an emotional support also. And my eldest sister could have actually played a role in preventing it from happening to me. But because of this whole way in which it is done, where there's not a word of it let out when the girl is taken, when she's cut and when she's brought out, and she's told to hush and keep quiet so that nobody will ever know about it. And there is so much of psychological trauma which is attached to it that no child really ever has the courage to talk about it. My own case, I spoke about this literally when I was 40, when I got the courage to speak about it publicly. Till then, and despite the fact that I'd worked in a women's movement, I could not face the reality of my own being cut in my own life with FGM. So it exists in Asia, but the biggest problem, I think, and which I would like to use this platform to speak about, is that there is no data about it. There is no evidence. So it continues to be invisible. And unfortunately for us, the governments in these countries are not taking any proactive stands. And which is why, bodies like the UN also many a times do not recognize. Now they've started speaking about Asia. But for very many years, FGM was considered an African issue.
Yes. Thank you so much. To be continued. Look, amazingly, it's 7:35. We've got 15 minutes to take 15 questions. How are we going to do this? We're not going to get through all of them. So I'm going to ask Miranda and others from the Orchid team and maybe the other panelists to maybe type in the responses to some of them. I might try and do that because, we multitask, that's all fine. But I'm going to start throwing out some popcorn questions to the panel if I can. I've got one here saying, Ifrah, or all of us, is it true that mothers and grandmothers are more the driver behind FGM than fathers, patriarchs? How do you feel about that question, Ifrah?
Well, you see, even man himself blames women for everything because he says she's the housekeeper, she's doing this, she's doing that, and grandma. Also, man sometimes is part of this FGM. So it's everyone. Some men, they say they didn't know the daughter was cut, but they are part of it.
Yeah. And there's another question about what role do men play in the campaign. So that sense of how much we engage everybody, right? I just answered my own question. We engage everybody.
Okay.
Look, Mary, a couple of questions for you. A couple of people are asking about Jilly Squires. Hi, Jilly, lovely to hear from you, who's a police person, in West Midlands. Really wants to use the film for educational purposes.
Absolutely.
How can she do that? And someone else has asked the same thing about
two ways. One is to go to the film's website and request an impact screening. There's a form on the website to request a screening through there's an organisation called the Film Collaborative that organises those, or directly to the UK distributor, who I think AnotherWay Now dealt with. But the easier way is just to go to the website, I think, and make a request, and then that gets handled.
Wonderful, thank you.
And we love, as much as people want to use it for impact, please do.
So Tracy's asked a great question about loving the scene where the refugee worker spoke to Ifrah in Somali and your response to that. Language is a barrier to seeking help. Is learning to communicate in someone's native language important to help women who are at risk of the practice?
So that's for you, Ifrah.
I think I lost you a little bit of what you said.
I guess it's just the question about language, of how important was it that you were able to communicate with someone in Somali about the issue. It comes from someone who's listening who is working for a charity in the UK. How much do we need to break through this language barrier?
I think it was, for me, if I speak about myself, coming to Somalia as an Irish citizen, people didn't really get me on point of as a Somali activist. They say I was a westernized, I should go back to Ireland and things like that. So I readopted myself on the tradition way of Somali, being a Somali. And then there is a level we speak together, and I use that level, which is no matter actually if you're Western or you're African or you're Somali, there is a language you use. And that language is that, when I speak, they ask, why are you talking about, are you not cat? Are you not shy? Are you not ashamed talking about private part and things like that? So we use different levels, raising awareness. So we just adopt what is there the moment we're in. And it's very difficult because you cannot make a decision what language you want to use it, because people are different. They have different mindset and they are different humans. So we deal with the moment we're in different levels.
Thank you so much. And I think that follows up on a great question from Susan, who'd asked about how to talk about FGM to others to raise awareness while still speaking with respect for the communities that have practiced it. And as Orchid, we tend to use female genital cutting in our work because so often women that we're working with around the globe won't even use FGM or FGC, they'll use whatever their language is to describe the practice. And I think it's a way for us to come towards people without preordained judgment, to allow the conversation to happen and the dialogue to happen. So I think language is really important. Guys, I'm going so fast here, but Masooma, there's a great question. Someone worked for 4 years in India, recently mentioned FGM to a very dear friend, and she walked away from the conversation. I've tried to reestablish contact, but she's not replying at all. What next?
Actually, this is a huge issue. And how do you have conversations with women? And this is something which it's part of our daily work, and we're constantly trying to talk. As Ifrah, very rightly said, and Julia, you also pointed out, language is so important. Using the words like cut or sexual parts, you immediately branded as a shameless woman. And this is something which we were told initially, that you are talking about your sexual parts, you're talking about sexual pleasure, you're talking about sexuality in public, because that's something which women don't talk about. But having intimate personal conversations with women. So there's a huge amount of sensitivity in how do you start that conversation? How do you make the other person feel comfortable? The best way I have found in my own personal capacity is I start with my own story. And the minute I start with my own story, I think I build an emotional bond. because I become vulnerable when I'm talking about my story and I'm sharing my vulnerability with that person. And somewhere along the line, it kind of makes sense because ultimately our stories are the same. And the fact of the matter is whether I may ideologically believe in the practice or not, the procedure has happened. We have both been impacted by the procedure and it has impacted our lives. And that becomes the beginning and the starting point of having a conversation. So I think storytelling works beautifully in breaking barriers and developing an emotional connect with people.
Beautiful. Oh, am I muted? No, I'm not. That's beautiful. Thank you. And I think that's beautiful web of connection. I can almost see it as you're saying it. Mary, Charlotte asks, the film is beautifully shot and tells a profound story in a relatable way. Oh, sorry. That's the bit for Mary. How does Ifrah feel about the film and the outcome so far? You're on mute.
Mute.
How do I feel the film impact so far? Is that what I heard?
Yeah.
It really is good because, and we screened the movie everywhere in Europe, America, and Africa. And the best moment for me was when we screened in Nairobi because first time in group of color that, all African national, mostly were in the room and they were all watched, men and women and, young and old. And for me, watching them and seeing the positive outcome from them and telling me that this movie, it's not telling just your story. I remember women come, she just hugged me and she told me that I was telling the story of herself, her mothers, her sisters. And then other lady, they said same thing. And that make me realize that, as I used to say, that it might be my voice, but it's the voice of many women. So it showed, that movie make me realize that that's it, now this movie needs to go to African countries almost everywhere. And yes, it might be my story, but the story of everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. Mary, can I give you this one, which is just a delightful question?
Sure.
What is the role of global cross-cultural solidarity in this issue? Thought you'd like that.
Gosh. What is the role of global?
Cross-cultural solidarity. Ifrah, go on mute, babe.
What do you think that means?
Well, and it's an anonymous questioner, so I think that means, well, and in a way, maybe Masooma's answered it, right? This sense of the web that connects us.
I'd love to comment. One of the things that really relates what Ifrah's just been saying to what Masooma was saying, and she put it so beautifully as I was listening to you about how you approach speaking with somebody. You got to the place where you mentioned that when we reach out to people with vulnerability, they start to engage. And part of what and I only know this from other gender-based violence activities, is that part of the trauma that you were speaking to and that Ifrah has spoken to, which is a huge part of what we don't spend a lot of time dealing with in FGM activism, because so much of it is focused on eradication and abandonment, and so little on dealing with the trauma, particularly associated with the practice for the 200 million women worldwide who are dealing with the consequences of it. And that trauma is something that Ifrah, in her fabulous natural instinctive way, found a way to heal in a way. And I always like to think of when I approach a work, and this is where maybe film meets trauma and activity, is films work for me when there's a story where the character engages emotionally with the audience, where the narrative is driven through character. And when that character connects with an audience, and we all know it when we go to movies and cry, or we emotionally empathize with what and engage with what's going on. And it always reminds me of a great healer once who told me, and it's a Native American notion, but it applies to so many cultures. I know it's a Celtic notion that there are 4 great universal healers, and they are singing, dancing, storytelling, and silence. And no matter where or what we employ or apply them to, they do work. And we know they work on trauma because we know that the fundamental symptom of trauma is the inability to feel. And the cure for trauma is that when you start to feel, when you tell your story and you touch people, you start to feel. And then you start to heal.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Can I just check one thing? The 4th was silence, is that right?
Yes, silence.
Lovely. Masooma, over to you for one last thought.
I just wanted to add to what Mary just spoke so beautifully. So when we started We Speak Up.
Oh, have others got Masooma frozen?
Yes, we want to hear her.
Oh, who were interested in this subject, who had heard my story and who were wanting to connect with me. And in the first 10 days, we had 50 women from across the globe who were survivors of FGM. And in the first, 1 month, we were just talking, and it was like for the first time in our lives, we had never spoken about this, and we were talking about what we went through. And there was varied experiences, but the kind of sharing which happened on this platform was so liberating. I cannot tell you. Things which we did not discuss with our spouse, with our partners, with our mothers, with our sisters, with our friends, we were talking with each other about. So we had psychologists, we had teachers, we had housewives, we had doctors, we had all kinds of women in the group, and each one was narrating her experience and her life post the trauma of FGM. And that became an incredible bonding for us to kind of form an organization and say, hey, listen, we're going to work together to eliminate FGM. And that was a powerful tool which we had.
Can you believe it? We need to bring the Q&A to a close. I can't believe it. I want to give the last word to Ifrah though in this Q&A, and a few things you said in the film. One was, I will not be silenced. The other was, the best way to fix the past was to focus on the future. And of course, be the voice, not the victim. Ifrah, can you inspire us about where the movement is going next, please? The movement to end this practice.
Well, what I can say is last 10 years, before we reach to 2030, there was such amazing work has been done. And Juliet, you are so part of it, that movement last 10 years, where we all been so drive to go meeting to meetings, going to place, speaking to everyone, and everyone raising awareness in their own ways. So I think we are next going to, I think we have done so much campaign and we have done so much work. Now I think it's time to shame the leaders. Next 10 years, just shame the leaders. And that is how we can make it different, because I think we have been so soft with our leaders, whether it's the African leaders or whether it's the global leaders, because if, let's say, someone makes a promise in front of the UN and they make look themselves, we follow and never stop. And we should have a one voice. Next 9 years, we should focus on what our leader says. That is how to end the FGM. We will never stop our campaign. We will never stop our leadership, but let's put our focus on our leaders and see where they're going. They promised us, they broke our heart. They promised us, they break our heart. They promised us, they let us down. They promised us, they feel good. They promised us, they finished the in terms of being a government. So we had nothing from them. So let's push them and let's shame them and get what we want. That is where we are going.
Thank you so much. And I think alongside the shaming, also supporting those who are doing the right thing and doing it in the right way, because we can also model stuff that's going well and modeling work that Ifrah Foundation is doing, and so many extraordinary NGOs like We Speak Out and others, so that in a way we shame them by doing what we do so well. But we are absolutely with you on that. We're going to move to some brief call to actions, because it can be so, I know I've sat on quite a few webinars in the last year, and what actually can we do? And I know some of the questions were addressing that. 6th of February is the International Day to End Cutting. So Orchid Project's request, our call to action is, we have a campaign that is up there, and I hope it's also going to go into the chat box as if by magic, so that people can click on the link and see that campaign. If you could share that. It's to really show how global this practice is. We have figures of 200 million women affected in 31 countries. That's all the data sets are showing. As Masooma said, there are so many more countries around the world practicing, up to 90 countries. So we need to show this web of connection, and we need to show how global the practice is. Mary, you're kindly going to do the call to action for Ifrah Foundation, please.
Sure. So with the director's hat on, obviously simple call to action is tell everybody about the movie. There's an old Irish phrase, if you like to tell all your pals, and if you didn't, save your breath to cool your porridge. So if you want to spread the word, that's very welcome. Ifrah Foundation's activities now in Somalia and out into East Africa, after years of study and preparation, and pilot projects building up to a holistic and concerted campaign that is, as Ifrah mentioned, about to be launched, recognises the need for, and the call for action is for this 6th of February, to understand that in order to end FGM, we need to fund grassroots activists on a sustained basis on campaigns that are conducted at scale, and to fund them consistently. Ifrah Foundation is about to launch a unique and game-changing nationwide campaign in Somalia, for which a good portion of the funding required, and it's not big money, but it's significant funding has been required, has been secured to launch it. So individuals can absolutely support the work of Ifrah Foundation by visiting the website at ifrahfoundation.org, and please follow and spread the word on social media at Ifrah Foundation Twitter. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mary. And over to Masooma, please.
Thank you, Julia. In India, we are working very hard in the grassroots. We Speak Out and SAYO are two organizations which are working in this space. We face an uphill task because the government in India does not even accept that FGM exists in India, because they say there is no data on FGM in India. So in a sense, we remain invisible. And unless and until the government starts accepting that and does research studies and informs policy about FGM, it's not going to change. So we would like you to join us in petitioning to the government to recognize FGM and then to take steps to end it. This is the link to the petition, which is on change.org. You can follow us on our social media and support us every step of the way.
Thank you so much. 3 really important calls to action, and I see Denise is saying we can access all of that information on the AnotherWay Now website. It only leaves me to thank 3 incredible women on this panel who I've just loved being with. I found so inspiring to talk to you. I heard words of connection, of sharing. I've heard lifting others up. I've heard putting young women into the spotlight so that their stories get told. I've heard authenticity. I've heard the power of story, of vulnerability, of, I've said sharing. And really, I just want to pay tribute to all of you, and particularly to Ifrah on this journey. I feel so hopeful that we are all walking towards ending female genital cutting. Ifrah, we're right behind you, shaming, but also holding to account, making sure that those empowered do take responsibility, that the future of girls is on a different trajectory. Before I hand back to Tina, I want to thank AnotherWay Now and Tina in particular. I also want to say a really quick shout out to someone who's on this call, Lyndall Bale, who was the first ever volunteer at Orchid with me before Orchid existed, who I hadn't seen for many, many years. And I just saw her name. Lyndall, not be here without you. I want to hand back to the extraordinary Tina and just say thank you again for coming together, everyone. Women changing the world. How extraordinary. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Julie.
Thank you all. Thank you so much.
You. Well, who'd have thought a few years ago that this is how we spend a Thursday evening? And in a funny kind of way, lockdown works. We wouldn't all be able to be in the same place at the same time in the way that we are right now. Not that I'm overly grateful for it, but I really am grateful for tonight. So I want to thank you, Julia from Tooting, Ifrah from Mogadishu, Mary from Goa, Mary from Dublin, and no, I bet Mary wishes she was in Goa, and Masooma, you from Goa. Also thanks to Together Films and to the Orchid Project for their support and their collaboration in this, which has been really an extraordinary experience. And the stories that we've heard on the way to making this happen have actually been mind and life changing. So I'm very grateful to all of you for that. I have to also put my thanks out to Denise and Ella, the team at AnotherWay, who just have worked relentlessly to coordinate and make it all work as seamlessly as it has. So thank you, Denise. Thank you, Ella. So for your information, before we just close down, I just want to say that a recording of this event is going to be on our website from tomorrow. So we're going to put everything together and put it on the website. So if you or anyone you wants to have a look, please just go there and just have a look and use it in whichever way you can. And the third point is, and the final point really is, AnotherWay Now is a charity. We show films on all kinds of things. We've shown films on death penalty. We've shown them on, of course, on FGM. We've shown them on people trafficking. And we want to continue to do this kind of stuff, partly because we love it and we grow and we learn, but partly also because it just feels like such an opportunity to bring something else into the world. So if you want to support us, then there is a support us button on our website. Please press it and support us in any way that you can. And anyone who hasn't already signed up for our events, if you want to come to more of these events, just put your name on the email and we'll make sure that you're included in the mail outs when we do them. But thank you everyone who's attended for being here. Thank you to this extraordinary panel, and just have a lovely Thursday and a wonderful weekend. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. Wonderfully.
Thank you.
Julie, you were fabulous.
Thank you, Julia. Thank you, Tina. Thank you, Mary. It was wonderful meeting you.
Wonderful meeting you too. But really, thank you, AnotherWay Now, and Julia. I think you just did such a beautifully sensitive job running that panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. It's going to be so hard to say goodbye. How are we going to go?
Ella, Denise, Miranda, thank you so much.
Good night, all.
Special
good night.
Thank you to Miranda from Orchid Project. You'll be hugely missed. Good night, everyone. Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Ifrah.